Hello everyone, it's Michael, and this is the first video I've done in a few weeks, and there are various reasons for that. And today is going to be a different video because I'm going to be doing a video about the men going their own way. You know, the current war between men and women, where a lot of men are refusing to date women at all. All right, the intro is a little bit different, but only for this video. I promise it'll be the same from here on out. But there are other reasons why this video is different. I've thought about it a lot. I've made a whole lot of notes, and I've watched your interactions on other videos pertaining to this information. So I have it all logically set up. I'm going to do this from the standpoint of economics, game theory, maths, and then kind of tie it all together at the end. And then I have my own personal story about relationships. So firstly, in a nutshell, is it all that you all are looking for? And that's easy. You're looking for love and respect. You can't be happy, and that's the middle ground. That's what you're all looking for, is happiness. Thank you, Captain Obvious. And or a lot of you have spoken this way, and I've seen a lot of your comments, and yeah, you do speak about that, but all three of them are interlinked. You'll never be happy unless you're both loved and respected. It doesn't matter how much you have of one. If you have zero of the other, you're still not happy. If you have too much love, or all love and no respect is not love. That's, at the best, that's infatuation. At the worst, that's idolatry. And if you have 100% respect but no love, then that's loneliness. Congratulations, you have 100% street cred and you're still all alone. So next, I'm going to tell you why you should listen to me, what makes me a subject matter expert on this from both sides, men and women's side. But before that, I hate to bury the lead a bit here about what you're all arguing over, but let's be honest, you're just arguing over sex and money. You can use all the code words you want, but that's what you're arguing over. And the money thing ultimately is a macroeconomic thing, and that is not your fault. It's not your fault. What has happened is, over the past generation, even longer, the world has been run by the most selfish, incompetent, dumb fucks that have ever walked the earth, and that is the baby boomers. They have almost completely destroyed an entire planet in so many different ways in under half a century, which will continue as long as they're in power. But that is a story for another day. But like the macroeconomic stuff, why you have less and less and less buying power over time, especially the last generation, especially the last 10 years, is not your fault. It's the baby boomers' fault. So why should you listen to me, or why should you trust me? And I will have to explain this for both sexes. So from here on out, if I'm talking to the men, I'm going to be looking over here. If I'm talking to the women, I'm going to be looking over here. And if I'm talking to both of you, I'll just look at the green light. So how can I be a good advisor to you guys? Well, number one, I'm one of you. But even more so, I'm like the packaged version of all this Sigma and Stoic stuff you guys have going on. But for me, it was for a different reason. But you guys define Sigmas in a whole lot of different ways. But if you're talking about the loner archetype, the lone wolf that's been by himself most of his life and everything, not that whole lot of friendships or relationships, that's me in a nutshell. What's my zodiac? I'm a Taurus. A lot of you aren't into zodiac stuff, but we're known to be ambitious and chase money. So we're like patient zero on that. Even if you don't know about that, they know about that. And number three, what's my personality type? I am an INTJ. Some call us the architects, some call us the masterminds, some call us the supervillains. We're really notorious for who we are. So think of that combination altogether. Now, how I got there is different from you. What you guys have been doing for the last couple of years and everything, I've done for the last 20 years. But in a lot of ways, it wasn't because I swore off woman to a point. It was just because I got out of college and I got my first engineering job in Southern California but I wasn't broke. Broke people have zero money. I had $1,000 in the bank and $26,000 in student debt. Plus, between the balding thing in my early to mid 20s, and I'd gained some weight in college, and I still wore glasses, even though some girls are into that or whatever. Like, my self esteem wasn't all that high. I was glad I was making money, but in those days, there was no social media, but there were like dating apps like eHarmony and stuff. So even through all my insecurities, I would try for a couple weeks, but it never really panned out. And so I would give up after a couple weeks and then go back to playing video games because that was also the dawn of like online games where there's a social nature. You couldn't see these people, but you could play video games with them. And then, every once in a while I would go back to the dating apps and then that wouldn't work. And I would go back and year after year passed. And I was a nomad. I had a bunch of wanderlust in me, but I just lived below my means and saved up just a pile of cash. And, I was lonely, but I just didn't know what to do and everything. And I did that up to my 39th year. So now all you women are like, well, that's good for the guys, but how can you possibly be a good and good faith advisor to us? And that's because I am the world's foremost leading expert who is a man on how girls solve girl problems, or at least I claim to be. And it's a tragic story, but in my 39th year, I was almost 40. On February 7th, 2018, my parents died in a really bad car crash where they got hit by a drunk driver, car flipped down into the ditch, caught on fire, and burned them into just a bunch of mangled bones. And I was the oldest and had to do all the executor dead parent stuff. And at first, I did not take it well. When I wasn't working before they fired me, which actually turned out well for me, I would just go home after work every single night and drink 12 IPAs, smoke an entire pack of Reds, and sometimes puke on myself or puke in general, and sometimes not. And I would just pay bills and listen to Into the Mystic and have panic attacks and everything until I hit rock bottom and realized that that guy was going to be die either way. And if I didn't change who I was, that I was going to die. So I didn't want to die in the dark basement. It was kind of like anti-OCD. And there was this pub that I used to go to for lunch and everything. And they knew me. So I started going like every night during happy hour. And so I dealt with just bartenders and servers and stuff. And they were nice enough to, I don't even remember the dead parent stuff that I would tell them about, but they were nice enough to listen to it. And, they were very kind to me. They didn't try to take advantage of me. They didn't try to overserve me. And eventually they would start telling me their problems so I wouldn't have to so they wouldn't have to listen to me keep talking about mine. And I would genuinely listen because I realized the crazy dead parent stuff I was telling them. But like day after day, week after week, I had enough conversations where they would tell me the problem and then later on they would tell me how they solved it. And I just learned how to girls deal with all these different girl problems, problems with other women, sisters, co-workers, aunts, moms, stuff like that. And then the same thing on boyfriends, baby daddies, husbands, co-workers, stuff like that. And each day I would go home after a happy hour. And I was really disciplined, like only 3 beers, 3 hours, and then I would drive home and then do some dead parent stuff and play some video games. But when I was thinking, I would think about their problems and not my problems. And that helped me very much. And so, like, to this day, I don't go to happy hour anymore, but I do go out to breakfast. And I call the original ones that helped me after my parents died my angels because I use their problems to think about so I don't have to think about my problems. In the near term, after COVID, I call the ones at the breakfast places my muses because they're all the ones that inspired me, are my inspiration for my math. I don't know how I do it, but somehow I can take thinking about their girl problems and then it somehow applies to a math problem and I just solve it. I've done it so many times, it's not coincidence anymore. So in conclusion, like for the last 6.5 years, all I've been doing is basically listening to and interacting with women. I don't really have any guy friend. I have one bestie who lives in Iowa with his wife and 2 kids, and I talk to him on the regular, but that's it. Like the rest of my interactions are with women, and they're all good, except because of the situation, none of them are romantic and are not going to be that way. But in conclusion, even though I will say, I've learned from a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of all types of women in the world, you all do have similar problems when it comes to stuff, especially with other people, men and women. And what I've learned from you all helped me crack a hole in the universe. I would not be the man I am without you all. So you should be, and I mean that in the most sincerest way. So, like, even if you don't know these people, other women or whatever, you should be very proud of them because their little broken toy grew up big and strong. So now we're going to get into the maths, the game theory, and then the overall macro social interaction. So in layman's terms, why this has so spectacularly blown up, especially in the near term, you all are having a pussy control war. You were arguing over the cost of the pussy control card. And some of you might not like that term, so we could call it conditional consent. But from now on, let's just call it the card. And again, you might be offended, some women, but let's be honest. Not all women have had control over their body. It's not even all women on the planet at the moment and everything, which they should. But for those that do and everything, you've known that you've had that card since you hit puberty. And all the guys have known that they've had that card since they hit puberty as well. But in the past, there was an equilibrium. It's kind of like supply and demand. There's a 45-degree line, and that's like the third rail. If you hit that, then demand almost immediately goes down to zero. On the x-axis, you have disposable income, both men's and women's. Just think of it as a line that's segmented between the two. On the y-axis, you could call that the cost of the card, or you could call that expectations. But all in all, it forms this triangle. And as long as the tip of the triangle doesn't hit that line above it, then everything's fine. But as soon as it does, it's like monopoly pricing. As soon as it does, like all demand goes down to zero really, really quickly. So why hasn't this happened in the past? It has in some ways and everything during real severe depressions, but you got to think about it. For the triangle, in the good times, when the disposable income is really high on the bottom, it makes the triangle go farther out on the graph. And so the line above the tip of the triangle is naturally higher and everything. So the triangle expectations can actually be higher. But when real disposable income gets shrunk, the opposite effect happens. The other reason is they're retained in equilibrium, and this gets into social media, is especially for women, like there are always limits on playing the card. You got to, and it was always their card. There was no social media. Think about like the 50s or whatever, having like dinner dates with people in the neighborhood, and all the men are talking together and all the women are talking together, and she's bragging to her friends that she got her bracelet and everything, and they're all giggling about it. And the wise old woman's like, just remember, you can't do that too much. You don't want your husband to leave you, because then what would you do and everything. And plus, the gossip only was between those girls. It wasn't like, didn't get out any more than that. And the guys probably were just talking about sports or whatever. So, how has that changed today? Actually, one more point before I ask this, just going back to the disposable income and everything. To the guys, like, I understand the argument about she is voracious. I give her 1 apple, she wants 2. I give her 2 apples, she wants 3. 3, she wants 4. You know who doesn't care about that? The guy that owns the apple orchard. To him, like, the woman can eat as many apples as she wants to. I ain't ever gonna run out of apples. And then, like, you guys, your whole thing is calling them simps and everything, which what we called people like chumps back in the 90s and everything. But even when you do that, he's gonna say, "Listen, bro, you can call me a simp all you want, but like, I blew more money betting on the Jets last week than I spent on that woman, so it ain't that big of a deal to me. Like, when money is meaningless, they don't care. Like, what's the difference between you guys and some of the, the simps that you claim to hate? About $10 million. And you guys in the good times, especially whatever you can use the whole um bracelet thing, that metaphor that I talked about before. But in the past, in the good times, like, why play the card if you don't need it? If you can just get the thing you want without by yourself, you would just do that. And now, so what's changed? Why have these dynamics changed? Sorry, ladies, a lot of this on you, but like, your expectations, and I'm gonna bring some mass in here in a little bit, have been like sky high with the advent of social media. Not that a lot of you aren't fine AF. You are, but you have all these followers and all these guys telling you that you are goddesses, and that, I don't care who, he maybe had some women, but he hasn't had this. And like, you are just convinced you are goddesses with magical pussy. And like, that just ain't true. You're not goddesses, you're not queens, you're not princesses, you are mortal women. You're very beautiful, very smart mortal women, but you are mortal women nonetheless. And that shit isn't invincible, obviously. You guys are learning that right now. So, in conclusion, social media convinced many of you, the worst offenders, that you are a goddess, and you all kind of, since you've all, hey, look what I got, look what I got, look what I got, look what I got, and everything, that like, you know, and that it is where you thought it was invincible. You all just kept playing the card. And it's like you all consolidated your own personal cards on one giant card, and finally, like, the y-axis kept going up, 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 and up, and then hit the third rail and has absolutely stayed there. And that's why demand, or most demand, has dropped all the way down to zero. And there's this glut of people who are single, or guys who are single and don't want anything to do with you. Okay, ladies, I swear I'm not trying to pile on. Like I said, I'm the guy that really only hangs out with women, and I listen to you guys talk about your problems all the time. It's my superpower. That being said, your main sin, in a nutshell, is this. Oh God, I know he's such a self centered, selfish piece of shit, but he's so handsome and rich. And I just know my love and my girl parts can train him. I mean, change him. I mean, save him. All right, now to the pure maths, for you ladies that would like to know exactly how rare these guys are. So all I did was the typical um, men who are 6 feet tall, who make six figures, who are good in shape, have six packs, and then also I threw in their men that women find attractive. And I Googled all that stuff. That's what those screenshots are. But here's what the actual, I just did like a spreadsheet calculation because I'm awesome at spreadsheets. So as you can see, I just made a spreadsheet, the qualities, those four, and then the percentage, turned that into a decimal, did the calculation so you can see how the number's getting smaller, but you're taking the reciprocal in the end anyway to get the rarity, and then that's what the rarity is. That's that man for those attributes are 1 and X. And so you multiply everything together, do the reciprocal, and therefore for just those four attributes, there are only 1 in 2,254 men that will have all those characteristics, or 0.44%, so less than half a percent. So that's why when, and this is like the thing that you guys are swiping on your all your dating apps for the last 10 years. So when all the angry nice guys are like, I don't want you because you all been fucking the same 1% guys for the last decade and everything, and we don't really want to be the sloppy seconds. That's exactly what they mean, and why your expectations are ridiculous. I mean, you might think those are okay. I could do that and everything, but think about it anyway. Like every other woman is going to find a lot of um, these attractive as well because they're all over the internet. So you have to really be honest. Like there's one more modifier you can do to bring down the number a little bit, but how many women out of 10 are also looking for this and want to beat you to this man? And you could almost say 100%, but you might be able to say, no, not all women, maybe like 90%. All right. And then you're only competing against 2,000 other women for the same man. But when you get into social dating and everything in the apps, you know, you can still get a lot of hits, but he's still getting a lot of hits from you and 2,000 other women. All right, that is the YouTube video, the Veritissim YouTube video for what's called the Prisoner's Dilemma. And this is the game theory part of it. And this is the game that you're playing. It's a real famous thing and everything. Highly suggest you watch the video. As you can see, it's very popular. It has over 10 million views. But broad strokes and putting it into context for you guys' dating, I gotta say a few words about it. So they say in there that the way to play the game is basically four different things. They say you should be nice, you should be retaliatory, sometimes called provocable, you should be forgiving, and you should be clear. All right, I'm going to explain those in a little bit different way and then relate them to current dating and why it blew up. Okay, first of all, you should bring clear up to the front. All this Spain says is in a relationship context, you should be clear about what you want out of the relationship. And on both sides, especially women and men, but these days, reputation wise, people are not very clear about what they want. Number two, nice and nasty strategies, that's horrible words for it. What they mean to say is honorable and dishonorable, because the game's all about cooperation and betrayal. So honorable people do not betray other people because they have honor. Dishonorable people betray other people. Now, while we're doing this, why you guys might find it confusing if I don't explain this to you, the next one would be retaliatory. In this case, it's basically, you know, if they cheat on you, you kick them to the curb. If you get into the forgiving version of this and everything because of false positive and things that can be thought of as disrespect, if they really disrespect you or cheat on you or whatever, you got to kick them to the curb. But then the fourth one, forgiving, that's why, if they cheat, we should forgive them. Like supposedly if you play the forgiving part, it's like kick to the curb the first 9 and then give the 10th one chance if they screw up and then kick them after that again. But the reason in this context, what being forgiving means is while you have to kick someone to the curb and break up with them or whatever, you don't give up on the game altogether. You're still willing to play the game. And that's what has gotten broken recently in the dating game is you have a large population of men and women that just refuse to play the game anymore. All right, lastly, before I tell you my own personal relationship story and sign off, um, there is a scene from a very famous movie which shows succinctly how all this happened from, again, an economics thing, but a very famous economics thing. And here's the clip from YouTube. It's not just a movie thing. National equilibrium is a real thing. If you watch the entire movie, you'll understand like its history and everything. But you know, again, what he says in the movie is perfect. If we all go for the blonde, we're all going to block each other, and not a single one of us will get her. So then we'll go to her friends, but her friends will reject us too because nobody wants to be second pick. The only one, but what if we don't go after the blonde and we just go for her friends? We don't get each other's way and we don't offend the girls. It's the only way we win. It's the only way we all get laid. Except part of your problem right now, women, and it won't always be this way. They'll miss you. Yeah, you will. You will get lonely. Right now, they're just not even showing up at the dance hall. The only one that's showing up at the dance hall is the hot blonde, and that's the situation you're in right now. Now I finally get to my personal story, and I'm going to try to do it all in one take. It's both sad and happy. Number one, like, let me say that you all don't date each other for the bad times that you post on social media. You date each other for the good times, some of which you post on social media, but some of you don't. So I'll tell you about one of the good times that, you know, I'll always have like burned in my brain. All right. So my ex girlfriend, her name was Angie. Her actual name was Angelia Regina, her two given names. We dated for a while. We did break up. She was older than me by, I used to say 10 and 11, depending on the birthdays, but I think it was actually 11 or 12. So she was the oldest woman I ever dated and the biggest age gap I ever dated. Not that I've dated all that much, but I will also, we did break up, but I also would, she was the best girlfriend I've ever had. Unfortunately, she also died. She died on February 11th, 2022, which was exactly 4 years and 4 days after my parents died in the year I turned 44. A whole lot of fours. And there's a whole big story about that I might tell you guys someday, but I'm going to tell you about one of the good times now. So when we first started dating, we met at that pub that I was telling you about, and I'd lost a bunch of weight. I'd lost like 70 pounds in 10 months and everything. So self-esteem wise, I was feeling a whole lot better, but I really wasn't out into the dating pool at all. I was maybe on Bumble for like a week or whatever. And at first we were kind of like drinking buddies, but then we started dating, and our thing would be to go to happy hour. And then rarely we would go back to her place. Most of the time we would come back here. And then sometimes we would literally Netflix and chill. But sometimes, especially during the cold months, I would make a fire, and we would sit there and, you know, drink and smoke and talk and flirt until we got horny enough for each other. And I remember when we first started dating that I asked her why she only drank Miller Lite at the bar, and she just said, well, I'm just not that big, and, you know, I drink light beer so I don't get too drunk. And but she was like, if I had my druthers and everything, like a chauffeur, she said I would love to be drinking wine. I asked what kind of, and she said Pinot Grigio. And so there was this one day where I was out and about. I don't remember if it was Kroger or Walmart, but I remember her saying that she liked wine, Pinot. And so I didn't know anything about wine. And I remember, like, I saw the bottle of Echo in front of me, and even I'd heard of Echo Domani. So I got a bottle of that. But then I looked up at the top shelf, and I mean, it wasn't like $100. It was like $25 bottle of wine, but it was called Santa Margarita. So I got the two bottles, brought them home, put them in the refrigerator, met her out at the pub for happy hour. Then we came back to the house. She walked in the kitchen. I said, hey, do you want a beer? And she said, yeah, sure. And I went to the fridge and I saw that, you know, the bottles. And so it was kind of like in the movies. I came walking out with the bottle behind my back. And I told her the story I just told you about the seeing it at the store or whatever. And I put the bottle in front of her and I said, you know, I don't know how good it is. And she looked at it and she said, that's my favorite wine. And then she started crying. And I was super confused face because I didn't understand why she was crying then. And so I just gave her a little bit, and she finally, you know, dried her tears a little bit. And she looked at me and said, when I first got divorced from my husband, her baby daddy of her two kids. She said, being a single mom of two, money was really tight, and I would sometimes go to the grocery store and I would look at that bottle and try to do the calculation in my head whether I could afford to get that bottle of wine or if I would just buy a cheaper bottle of wine like Echo or whatever. And she said, you know, and then she started tearing up a little bit again. And I was trying to diffuse the situation with humor and I'm me. And I said, Angie, that was a long time ago. You don't live like that anymore. And besides, now that I know you like it so much, I'm gonna make it rain Santa Margarita on you, woman. And then I'm like, I'll get you a glass right now. So I walked around her, grabbed a glass out of the cupboard, and had to get the old school corkscrew because yes, Santa Margarita does have a cork in it. And you got to realize the rest of this, I'm like looking at the bottle while I'm opening it up. So I just basically grabbed the corkscrew or whatever, and that's when she says, "You are so unlike any man I've ever met." And I was kind of like, "How so?" And after a short pause, she said, "You're kinder. You're much kinder," which is a great compliment, but that wasn't really what I was expecting. And so there was like this awkward pause for about a second. And I was about to say something. I don't know what it is, but she said, "You're much rarer than you think you are," which kind of made me smile and everything. And so I'm opening up the bottle still. And I'm like, "So you're saying I'm like a unicorn among men?" And she says, "Yeah, you are." And she said it so quick, I didn't really hear the inflection in her voice. So that made me really smile. And I finally looked up at her and looked her in the eyes, and instantly, like, the smile dropped off of my face and probably all the color out of my face too, because that woman was not kidding, not even a little bit. And so after, again, like a long second or two of pretty intense eye contact, all I could think to say was, "Thank you. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about me." And that is a story of a high value woman. So I know this one's been really long winded, but for everybody that's watched, I'm definitely giving it an effort. So as always, rule number 1, do not touch other people without their consent, aka do not hurt each other. And rule number 2, it's all about honesty. Lies are ticked down, aka try not to lie. All right. I love you all, and I will talk to you later.